Good evening. I'm Tom Carson, President of the League of Women Voters of Glendale, Burbank, and I would like to welcome you to our forum this evening. As we begin our evening of democracy in action, let us start with a pledge of allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The League of Women Voters was started in 1920 after women won the right to vote. For the last 40 years, membership in the League has been available to men as well. Our forum this evening is being produced with the assistance of the League of Women Voters of Los Angeles. We are strong supporters of the election process, and we join the cities of Burbank and Glendale in encouraging voters to not only vote themselves, but to reach out to their family and friends to vote as well. For the June 7th election, the deadline for registering to vote or to changing your registration is Monday, May the 23rd. The questions you will be hearing tonight are questions we have received from the public. We hope the candidates will find these questions to be challenging, making you, the voters, to make an informed choice. Tonight's candidate forum rules call for adherence to the terms of civil discourse by both candidates and the public. The hallmark of democracy is the willingness of all members of our community to treat each other with courtesy and respect, not just the people that we happen to agree with. It is in that spirit that we are here this evening to engage in a vital part of our democratic process, a civilized discussion of important issues that confront our communities. So I want to thank all of the candidates and the audience for being here tonight. We also thank the City of Burbank for once again providing the facilities for these forums. We are particularly grateful for the assistance of Drew Sugars, the Burbank Public Information Officer, and his staff. We have League members here tonight who are making this forum possible, including our timers, Mary Dixon and Renee Leask, our question sorter, Chris Carson, and myself. And now I would like to introduce our moderator for the forum, Rita Zwern. Rita is a longtime League member with much experience in moderating forums. We are grateful to Rita for the many hours that she devotes to the League. Rita?
Thank you, Tom. Good evening and welcome to the candidate forum for the 43rd Assembly District. There are 8 individuals running for this seat in the June 7th primary. The top 2 vote getters, regardless of party, will advance to the November 8th general election. This forum will be broadcast live this evening and then at various times until the election date on the Burbank channel and Burbank's YouTube channel. No reproduction or rebroadcast of this forum may be made without the prior written permission of the League of Women Voters in the City of Burbank. No digital or other forms of photography or recording are permitted in these chambers during the forum. The audience here tonight is invited to submit written questions for the candidates. Please raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, and one of the monitors will provide you with a card and pencil. Questions will be collected only during the opening statements and the first 3 questions. We would request that the audience turn off all cell phones and pagers and that they refrain from applauding or otherwise disrupting the forum. If a candidate's supporters are disruptive during another candidate's remarks, the other candidate will be given additional time to compensate for the interruption. Additionally, attacks of a personal nature, including private matters having no bearing on a candidate's public persona or ability to perform the duties of the office in a competent, ethical manner, will not be tolerated. If a candidate makes a personal attack during his or her remarks, the time required for me to interrupt the candidate and remind him of the rule will be taken from his own speaking time. All 8 candidates for the 43rd Assembly District were invited to participate in this forum. 2 of the candidates did not accept our invitation. I'd like to introduce the 6 candidates who are participating tonight. They are in alphabetical order: Andrew Blumenfeld, Dennis Bullock, Aaron Cervantes, Laura Friedman, Artie Kasakian, and Mark McCarley. Each candidate will be allowed 1 minute for an opening statement, after which there will be a series of 12 questions during the forum. The first question will be addressed to candidate number 1 on the dais, who will have 2 minutes to respond. Candidates 2 and 3 will then have 1 minute to respond to the same question. The second question will be first addressed to candidate number 2, who will have 2 minutes to respond, followed by a 1 minute response by candidates 3 and 4, and so on, so that each candidate will have a chance to answer 2 questions first. Following the question period, the candidates will be given 2 minutes each for a closing statement. During these responses, our timekeepers will alert candidates to the time remaining with signs of 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and then a stop sign when they are out of time. We will now begin with opening statements. Mr. Blumenfeld, your 1 minute opening statement, please.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Andrew Blumenfeld. I'm a candidate for State Assembly. You know, I've lived in the 43rd Assembly District my entire life. I just finished my term as member and president of the Locking Out Unified School District Board of Education. And I'm a 5th grade public school teacher in South Central Los Angeles, where I teach math and science. So as you can tell, I've had a very diverse set of experiences working on behalf of our community, and especially for its kids. There are a couple things, though, that have united these diverse experiences. One is the extent to which I have been able to deliver results for our community despite enormous challenges. And the other, more frustrating thing that brings me to this work is how often we are dedicating our time, our human and financial resources, to fighting Sacramento to do the things that we know we need to do to deliver results for our community. That's what brings me to this race. I'm here to be a champion for our community so that we can do what we do best, and that's serve our community, not fight with Sacramento.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock, your opening statement, please.
Well, I want to thank the League of Women Voters, first of all, for inviting all of us up here tonight for this forum. I was born at Providence St. Joseph Hospital in Burbank, California, and I teach at Providence High School right next door. I graduated from that high school. I've lived in this district all of my life, and I care about the district. I have, for many years, watched politics, but I'm a political outsider. I have not been involved directly in politics, but I have ideas, and that's what I'm running on. The seat obviously is open. Mr. Gatto is termed out, and what I bring to the table are ideas, a political philosophy whereby I believe we can use tax incentives in many different ways to help ourselves with problems and situations that we have right now, and with regard to education funding, with regard to implementation of minimum wage policy, and I'm also very concerned about water issues. I have lots of ideas and am willing to share them with you tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Cervantes, your opening statement, please.
Thank you and good evening. It's an honor and pleasure to be here. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters of Glendale and Burbank for inviting me and allowing me to participate in this forum, which the League has put together for our 43rd State Assembly District. I would also like to thank those in attendance, those watching at home, or anywhere else for joining us and taking the time to see some of your choices and listen to what we have to say. I was born, raised, and continue to live in this district. I am running so the people who have a voice are represented properly and justly. The government is becoming too large to where legislation is being forced upon us more and more as to where the people are losing the ability to govern themselves on a local level. As a United States Army veteran, I pledge my allegiance and loyalty to the United States of America and the United States Constitution. As your candidate, I pledge my allegiance and loyalty to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Friedman, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. I'm Laura Friedman. I'm a mom, a small business owner, and since 2009, I've been a Glendale City Council member and mayor. I ran for council to bring a more progressive vision to our region. When I was first elected, I was able to work with 2 of my colleagues to ban the Glendale gun show from taking place on city property right across from our community college. I've worked hard to preserve neighborhoods, create new parkland, to support the arts, to make Glendale a more environmentally sustainable city. I'm proud to have been able to support Glendale's first affordable housing project for returning veterans and to invest millions of dollars in capital projects in our public school system. At the same time, I've worked closely with small business to streamline our ordinances and make Glendale an easier place to create jobs. Because of the policies I spearheaded, Glendale was named both the most business-friendly city in Los Angeles County and has the best, was given an award for having the best green plan in all of Southern California. Running for an assembly is an extension of the work that I've been doing for the residents and an effort to leave our California, a California that our children of California they can be proud of. Thank you.
Mr. Kasakian, your opening statement, please.
Thank you, and my thanks to the League. My name is Artie Kasakian, and I'm asking you for your vote. I ran for elected city clerk 11 years ago because I believe that public service is an important calling. And the reason I ran then is the reason I'm running now. I believe that the people need strong advocates to represent them in the halls where the decisions are made that affect our lives. I'm passionate about ensuring the public trust. That's why as soon as I was elected city clerk, I embarked on modernizing the city clerk's office to make sure that campaign finance reform was out in the public eye so people could access it through the internet and other means. Fighting for election reforms that were lauded and praised by the LA Times, and fighting for higher voter turnout. Because I believe that every time special interests come up against us politicians, it's the people power that will win over the special interests, every time. And as a son of immigrants, my family has instilled in me an ethic of hard work and believing that to those to whom much is given, much is required in return. So I'm here to serve the people of the 43rd District and work on issues of improving education, the economy, and neighborhood safety. Thank you.
Mr. McCarley, your opening statement,
Thank
please.
you. I'm Mark McCarley. I'm running for 43rd Assembly District. Again, thank you, League of Women Voters. I, like many up here, have been born and raised in the district. I went to school here, public and private, Thomas Jefferson Elementary, then on to Bellarmine Jefferson, the epitome of patriotic service and value. I went on to school, came back, engaged as a lawyer, taught college at Glendale College, real estate law for 12 years. Came on out, spent most of my time in a variety of areas. I'm a law enforcement officer, reserve deputy with the LA Sheriff's Department, and then about 2003, my life went completely 180 degrees, and I was called back into the United States Army. I spent and have spent 11 years in the Army, 2 tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Kuwait. Came out finally as a general officer, head of the school system, or deputy head of the school system for the Army. 534,000 student contacts.
Thank you.
That's what I've got. Thank you.
We'll now begin the question period. The first question is directed to Mr. Blumenfeld. In recent years, funding for our state's court system has been materially reduced. What proposals would you make to help ensure that the justice system is sufficiently restored so as to provide adequate and timely justice for our residents and businesses? Mr. Blumenfeld, your 2-minute response, please.
Thank you. This question hits near and dear to my heart, actually. My father is a judge in the California state court system, and so I have heard from a very young age about the ways in which our lack of commitment to funding the courts has manifested as a delay in justice for many of our residents, so much so that even the state Supreme Court Chief Justice has suggested that the delays amount to a Fifth Amendment due process violation. So absolutely, if you're in the state legislature, your job is to make sure that your residents, your citizens get justice delivered, and in order to do that, we need to properly fund the courts. It's also important for us to recognize the role the courts play in rehabilitation. Far too often when we cut the court system, what we end up doing is really skimming off of the parts of the court system that are best equipped to make sure that we lower the recidivism rate and that we're providing the sort of services that our citizens need, so that we are following up with them once they have had a run-in with the law, and we're keeping up with them so that we can make sure it doesn't happen again. As soon as we begin to decimate the court system, not only is that justice delayed, but all of those follow-up services that make sure that someone doesn't ever have this negative interaction with our legal system again, those get stripped away too. So absolutely, the court system is a priority for me. And unfortunately, we've seen a legislature that has been chewed apart by special interests that have poured money into this and races up and down the state. They have allowed for themselves to get their piece of the pie, all the while the parts of our government, the parts of our public service system that don't have special interest advocates for them, that don't have lobbyists in Sacramento, that don't have lobbyists that are spending money on this race, they're the ones, like the courts, like the parks, like the schools, they're the ones that go first. This campaign has not and will not take money from those special interests, and because of that, we will go to Sacramento with the level of independence necessary to stand by those vital public services when they get called into question in tough budget times.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock, your 1-minute response, please.
Thank you. There is a dearth of funding in our court system, and it's created a gigantic backlog. But I think what we can do is we can connect what there's bipartisan support for right now at the federal level, and hopefully it's going to work at the state level too, and that's sentencing reform. Because our prisons are overcrowded, and we need to be able to afford what we're doing in the first place as far as incarceration. As we reduce incarceration rates, we'll reduce the amount of money that costs us. We can direct that back to the courts and be able to fund them properly, get more judges and more operations going as we need them, and kind of trickle down or take down that backlog in order to be able to more efficiently run our court system.
Thank you. Mr. Cervantes, your 1-minute response, please.
Thank you. As a detention officer for immigration, I've seen cases go through the court system. Part of the problem is too many people are in jail. It's not just about funding. Part of the problem is too, how do we find juries more promptly? People don't want to show up for jury duty because they don't get paid. They lose wages by going on jury duty. We do need to fund the court system, but we need to fund the people too that go for jury duty. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 2. The next question is directed first to Mr. Bullock. What is your position on the most recent plans for the 710 freeway extension? Please explain what you see as potential benefits and costs to this extension. Mr. Bullock, your 2-minute response, please.
Thank you. Well, the 710 freeway extension has been an issue for decades. And it has been very contentious because obviously the communities that it would run through have been very defensive, and rightly so, of their way of life and the amount of traffic and pollution and so on and so forth that would come through there. I think the 710 extension, even though going now underground, is something we need to re-look at again if it indeed happens. Because what we really need to concentrate on is diversity in our transportation. My grandmother used to lament that they got rid of the red cars back in the 30s and 40s, and she remembered them very well, and they got people around. We went away from that because there was conventional wisdom that cars were the future. Well, they were the future, but they're not the future necessarily anymore exclusively. What we need to do is we need to diversify our transportation structure. We need to have not only more bike lanes and policies that are friendly to people staying near where they work and not having as big of a commute, but also light rail, subway, the whole 9 yards. We need to be able to diversify it in order to cut down on traffic, cut down on pollution, and really accept our way of life, because California, Los Angeles, is a gigantic city, and we need ways to get around, obviously, and freeways are never going to go away. However, that diversity will go a long way to relieve our freeway traffic, and if we can invest in that diversity fast enough, it may alleviate the need for the extension of the 710, which some people see, and others don't see that need. And so we have to be very, very sensitive to the communities through which that would run. And we have to make sure that they are not only brought into the conversation, but that we do them right.
Thank you. Mr. Cervantes, your 1-minute response, please.
Thank you. One thing we need to look at is that we can't keep expanding freeways over and over. That's only a temporary fix. We have to look at our population, how it's growing. We can't just keep doing the same thing over and over, spending money over and over. We need to expand on public transportation, like our speed train plan, and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Friedman, your 1-minute response, please.
No 710 freeway extension, no tunnels. The latest estimate is that those tunnels will cost $8 billion. That's money that if you spent even if a tenth of it on solutions at the 710 terminus and local diversion and getting people where they're going, which is to the UC school that's there and to local destinations, you'll do a lot more to relieve traffic than continuing the highway. What we need instead is a system of light rail around Los Angeles to move people around instead of being in their cars, and also to move freight by rail instead of running freight down up the 5, out on the highways, move it by rail, and that $8 billion, or even half of it in those kinds of investments, will pay off much more than extending that freeway. And by the way, doing that would also negatively impact the quality of life for millions of people living all along the proposed route. It brings more traffic, it brings more smog, and it really does the opposite of what we're trying to do by getting people out of their cars and into alternative transportation.
Thank you. The next question is directed first to Mr. Cervantes. One continuing issue which has not been adequately addressed is the funding requirements needed for public employee retirement benefits. What would you propose to address the issue of underfunded public employee retirement benefits? Mr. Cervantes, your 2-minute response, please.
Thank you. We need to make sure we have better retirement plans. The old stuff is not working anymore. People are living a lot longer, so there's no more funding for that. So can we create more taxes? People don't want more taxes. So the government has to find better ways of funding pensions, retirement, even Social Security. We have a long way to go, and we're not even close. So plans would be to redirect some funding for pensions, people that have worked all their lives who deserve that money. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Friedman, your 1-minute response, please.
Thanks. As I understand the question, it's about unfunded liabilities and pensions for government employees. Glendale's been a leader in doing pension reform. Now, we've done it with the cooperation of most of our employee groups through the collective bargaining process. I'm a big supporter of defined benefit plans for public employees, but they have to be sustainable. Now, I've had the benefit of spending 7 years running a city that is a sustainable city, that's in the black, that balances its budget, and also has sustainable pensions by increasing the cost sharing that the employees have paid, and by making sure that we don't have unfunded liabilities and dealing with our OPEB liability. We need people in Sacramento who are willing to stand up and do what's right and make sure that whatever we offer our employees is fair to them, but also sustainable going into the future. I've done it in Glendale, and I can do it in Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kasakian, your 1-minute response, please.
Thank you very much. We have seen pensions maligned as being the big crisis point in California. And what we seem to forget is that pensions are what we owe to the individuals who enter into the public service field and dedicate a life's worth of work in dedicating and serving the public, and then expect something of a retirement in return. Keep in mind that when people go into public service and they're in the system, they are not receiving Social Security, so they forego that. And this is what they have to live off of, many of them. And there is this perception that there are individuals who are probably cheating the system, and oftentimes we see those people who give the other thousands of individuals who are in the public sector a bad name. We saw it in the city of Bell, where you had the top management making $700,000 a year. The state legislature had to step in and stop that. We need to make sure that we cut the waste, that we reduce the top-heavy systems that we have in government, make sure that we reduce the costs in upper management, and really look out for the people who are relying on this for their retirement to retire in dignity.
Great, thank you. The next question is directed first to Ms. Friedman. Do you support the current 2/3 supermajority to approve tax increases? If yes, why? If not, what would you propose as an alternative? Your 2-minute response, please.
I do support that in Sacramento. I do, though, support lowering the threshold for local infrastructure projects so that cities have the ability to raise the capital that they need to do necessary infrastructure repair work. For instance, to repair their roads, to repair their aging water systems, which is a crisis in a lot of cities, including Los Angeles. These issues really can't be hijacked by small groups of people. We need to make sure that we have the funding to have the kind of quality of life that we all want. But I do think that Sacramento has shown shown over time that if they don't have strict limitations on the ability to tax, that they will tax and not make sure that their programs are effective, are streamlined, and necessary. So I think that the system that we have right now is working. We have at the state level, for the first time in a while, a balanced budget, and we're actually starting to put money back into the system. So I'd like to see that go forward, and I think that I can work within that system. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kasakian, your 1-minute response, please.
The state does have to look at how we're raising revenue. Our needs are increasing. We have a growing population of aging baby boomers. We have to look at, we all want nice things, we have to be able to pay for it. So we do have to look at how our taxing system in Sacramento throughout the state is structured and how we're applying it to the people. And what I support, and I've said this along the campaign trail, that we do need more local input into how we're taxed. When we look at education funding, we can, as Ms. Friedman suggests for transportation or infrastructure, I believe that we should apply that lowered threshold, 50% plus 1 or 55% to the parcel taxes that will go directly to funding our schools that are in dire need of help in having upgrades, having technology placed in there, and having the infrastructure of these schools rebuilt, including hiring more staff.
Thank you. Mr. McCarley, your 1-minute response, please.
Yes, my whole campaign is about empowering those folks out in the audience and on TV to give them the opportunity to make the decisions in Sacramento. And you know, this whole thing about the 2/3 supermajority is a consequence of the people standing up in 1976 in Proposition 13. They had enough of it. It was a runaway legislature. That legislature was putting taxes forward. All it took was a simple majority, and the people stood up. This was not something that came from Sacramento. Each and every one of you got down there and you put your name on a ballot. And that ballot proposition was passed, and it's perhaps one of the most important things that has ever been enacted in the state of California. It ensures that we have the opportunity to say whether we're taxed. I support it. Keep that supermajority.
Thank you. The next question will be directed first to Mr. Kasakian. What specific types of programs would you recommend to keep film and TV jobs in California? Please explain. Your 2-minute response, please.
Thank you very much. This is an issue that's near and dear to my heart because when I was elected city clerk, I learned that the city clerk's office in Glendale is where most of these filming permits were being processed through. And Glendale at the time did not have the best reputation in the industry for filming, even though we were within what's called a 30-mile zone. This is within a certain radius of the studios, wherein studios who do film in this area don't have to pay additional fees to their employees for staying overnight someplace, etc. So we met with the folks in the business, in the industry, location scouts and production assistants, and thought, what can we do to improve this? One of the issues was some of the bureaucracy and the high fees that the city was charging. Having a police officer or a fire marshal inspector assigned all day for a shoot that maybe only required a spot inspection for an hour. Through our hard work and by reducing the number of hours that someone would be assigned to some of these filmings, in Glendale, we've increased filmings by 20% since I was elected. We have 20% more filmings for TV, for music videos, for commercials, and for feature films. And I will tell you this, that there is more that can be done. I do support the tax incentives for the filming industry because what I believe is that these jobs are actually manufacturing jobs. This is something that we're producing here in the United States and exporting overseas to countries in Asia and Europe that people still want to purchase, and it supports so many other industries across the board here in Southern California. We have to do more, and one of the things that we can do is look at what others are offering, New York or Louisiana, and say, you know what, in order to keep our manufacturing jobs here, we will do whatever it takes. We'll match everyone's best and final offer. We're California. We created this industry. It started here, and my position on this is why I'm endorsed by the International Alliance of Theater and Stage Employees. They know I'll fight to keep the jobs here.
Thank you. Mr. McCarley, your 1-minute response, please.
You know, a film industry, it's been around here for a long period of time, and but the film industry is just part of the economy here in the 43rd District, because not only do you have film, but when you look back, about 60% of the activity, what people did on a day-to-day basis here, this place, was in things like manufacturing, building airplanes, putting together furniture, all that sort of thing that gave opportunity to our kids, gave them an opportunity to live the American dream. So it's not just about the film industry. The film industry is suffering the same sort of problems that hundreds of different businesses suffered here. You know, just with the the significant loss of manufacturing in this city, that has effectively made it far more difficult to live that American dream. So anything that we can do to remove that bureaucracy, reduce tax, that'll keep the film industry here, and it will keep every other industry that gives us an opportunity to live that dream. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blumenfeld, your 1-minute response, please.
Thank you. Well, when I think about the problem of the film and entertainment industry leaving this area, I think, where are they going and why are they going there? And the two major sources that are draining on our film and entertainment industry typically are Canada and now Georgia. And I look at what Canada and Georgia have in common and what's dragging the film industry in those directions. One of them, of course, is the incentives, and of course we should do our best to try and keep up, but that will be a short-term Band-Aid because that will just be an arms race of incentives. What they really have going for them that we should invest in over the long run is an education pipeline. We're sitting in Burbank City Hall, the perfect place to have this conversation, because the city and school district of Burbank have done phenomenal work that we should try and emulate throughout the district and throughout the state, and the state should support such programs as tying the work that we expect, the technical and creative work that we need in the film and entertainment industry, with the training and the vocational training we're doing in schools, so there's this direct and robust human capital pipeline that makes this the envy of all other cities and countries around the world to do film and entertainment.
Thank you. The next question will be directed first to Mr. McCarley. What is your position on medical marijuana? Do you support changes in the marijuana laws currently in force in California? And please explain. Your 2-minute response, please.
Well, you gave me the most interesting question of all. Quick answer is there's going to be a proposition on the November ballot. It was certainly praised today that Lieutenant Governor Newsom came up forward and said, hey, we're going to be progressive, we're going to move out, we're going to act just like Washington and Colorado, we're going to have not only medical marijuana, we're going to have recreational marijuana. I suspect that's the wave of the future if you're a libertarian to say, hey, people should have the opportunity to use that sort of thing. My only concern as somebody who has spent most of his life in both law enforcement and the military is that you got to be real careful because the use of those substances can breed all sorts of complications. Even Denver, Colorado, the state of Colorado, which has been at the forefront of the use of marijuana, has experienced an increase in crime. That's not necessarily to say it's all bad. Hey, we have the opportunity to do what's appropriate for us as long as it doesn't violate the law. But when you pass this sort of stuff, you've got to be cognizant of the fact that there are going to be increased costs for law enforcement because of the consequences of the use. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blumenfeld, your 1-minute response, please.
Thank you. I support the use of medical marijuana. I know that it has brought great relief to many people, individuals and families who were suffering, so I definitely support that. As for the expansion of it for recreational use, I do suppose that we'll see this proposition pass, and I do support that. I think we do have to be mindful, however, of lessons learned in other states, and certainly one of them is about regulation and control of the substance more generally. The thing I'm most concerned about and would advocate most strongly for in Sacramento is making sure that it stays out of the hands of children and away from schools. I'm very excited that today Governor Brown signed legislation into law that now raises the legal age for buying tobacco from 18 to 21. I think exactly that sort of move is the kind of thing that ensures that when we have these substances that adults can use in a moderate, legal way, that they don't end up back on school campuses or in the hands of children who are not yet ready to be responsible in their use.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock, your 1-minute response, please.
I think there are undoubtedly times when medical marijuana benefits people, but in my experience, I've seen far more often what it can do to someone, especially a young person, than what it does for them. And so, you know, people of age of 21 years old, they can make choices, and they're able to do that. And I think that is, you know, what we're going to be doing, and that's okay. But I think we need to highly regulate medical marijuana, because in the past, what medical marijuana really was people coming and saying they had a backache or whatever and just getting it. And I think that's far too easy and far too much of an abuse of the system. We need to regulate that very heavily, and then we also need to regulate if recreational does become part of our state. We need to regulate that very heavily as well. Make sure it stays out of schools, because it can be dangerous, and a lot of people can become addicted, and I think that is something we have to watch out for.
Thank you. The next question will be directed first to Mr. Blumenfeld. What are your suggestions for improving mass transit and other alternatives to the use of automobiles in our cities. Your 2-minute response, please.
Thank you. Well, I think from the legislative point of view, and what I would champion in Sacramento is that we have to invert the current ratio that we have between the amount of money that is provided to communities to expand their highway system and the amount of money that's dedicated to be more innovative about alternative forms of transportation. Unfortunately, right now, I think we have that equation completely backwards, and it is not providing an environment in which local and regional communities can come together and plan what's best for them. We talked earlier about the extension of the 710 freeway. This is a perfect example. When communities have to fight tooth and nail, as I did when I was on the school board, to pass resolutions opposing the extension of the 710 freeway, this is where we're dedicating our energies. I mentioned at the outset that so much of our time locally is spent fighting Sacramento. This is in exactly the right place where we could reverse that equation, where Sacramento can come in, provide grants to local and regional communities so that they can identify where their greatest areas of transportation need are, so people can move out of their cars and into mass transit. Another area that touches on this is the innovation around technologies that allow people to ride share. The state has been sort of derelict in their duty, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to making clear what the legal lines are around this, and have allowed local regulators to make a patchwork of decisions that have made it very difficult for these companies, new and some of the more established, to proliferate in a way that would allow people to avail themselves of mass transit, because then when you reach the end of the line but you're still a mile or two away from your destination, you can call one of these ride-sharing services. This is a huge opportunity for us to be able to close the gap on what used to be a massive roadblock for people when it came to getting out of their cars and into mass transit. And here we have the solution at our fingertips, and our state is so backwards and isn't thinking forward enough to make sure that we're not just letting these things happen, but supporting their proliferation in a responsible way.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock, your 1-minute response, please.
You know, our environment has been car-based for so many years that it has been difficult to sort of turn that ship around. And I think now we're starting to, because as I said with the prior question about the 710 freeway, it's important to diversify our transportation system. We need light rail. We need subway. We need more bike lanes. We need all of these things and incentives to use them for citizens. We have a bullet train that's currently, I think, going to cost about $62 billion. And I think that has really nothing to do with our transportation problems, because our transportation problems are not intercity, they're intracity. And we need to be able to direct those funds, if we can, because it seems like things have slowed down with that now. I'd be all for directing those funds at more localized transportation solutions.
Thank you. Mr. Cervantes, your 1-minute response, please.
Thank you. In order to expand public transportation, we need to make sure we make it affordable, accessible, and safe. If we expand transportation, just like the speed train, we need to make sure everybody has access to that, and it's affordable, not just the rich, not just high-class communities, but everybody. If we do that, everybody will go from their cars to public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be directed first to Mr. Bullock. Many activists in our area have been working hard on issues such as poverty, homelessness, support for our foster youth, and civil liberties. In your opinion, has the state been devoting sufficient resources in these areas? Please explain. Your 2-minute response, please.
Well, we've had locally in our not only our district, but in the greater LA area, we've had an explosion of homelessness over the past few years, and you know, tent cities and things like that. And it is not only depressing, but it is horribly economically debilitating, because all of these people are not participating in the economy, and they're really not getting any second chances or help. The state needs to invest very strongly in programs, rehabilitation programs, and the like, in order to help these people. You know, housing is a big issue. Housing is very difficult to obtain. It's a double-edged sword. If you own a house, your housing values have gone up because there's little inventory. And that's good for you because you have more equity and you're able to use that and do things economically for yourself. But it is not necessarily good for greater society in that we don't have enough housing. And we need solutions to that. We need to be able to look at our zoning laws and be able to convert old buildings as well as build new buildings that provide affordable housing, that allow people to be able to get into, Utah's done it, and LA is starting to do similar things. And it's been wildly successful in Utah, and I'm hoping it'll be wildly successful here because people, it's hard to break in to the market to find a home. If you're a young couple, it's difficult because of prices. If you're homeless or destitute, you're just looking for shelter in the first place. And so we have to have more housing at all levels because housing prices go up when there's not much inventory. And we need more inventory in order to be able to bring down some of those prices for these young couples and young people starting, and we need affordable housing and dignified housing for those who are destitute.
Thank you. Mr. Cervantes, your 1-minute response, please.
Thank you. No, the state has not done enough when it comes to homelessness, especially homeless veterans. We need to do more programs where veterans can be taken off the streets and readjusted to society. That's part of the problem. I'm big on veteran homelessness because I'm a veteran myself. I would hate to think that I would be homeless one day, especially as a veteran who fought for this country. That should never happen. We need to fund more programs for homelessness where we can get them off the street, pay for their housing for at least 2 years, get them a job so they can sustain themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Friedman, your 1-minute response, please.
Thank you. I happen to think that the biggest challenge right now facing California is poverty. Way too many people are struggling. Way too many people are not coming out of the economic recovery. I would like to see the state have a comprehensive policy to address poverty and all of the things that cause it. So we're talking about access to affordable child care, to health care, to housing that's affordable. And then we also have to look at people who have particular needs that are harder to address: the homeless, the disabled, people coming out of the foster care system. And only by looking at all of the causes of poverty and looking at them in a comprehensive way and then finding solutions to really make people self-sustainable, that's the only way that we're really going to help the people in California that are struggling right now. And that's something that I'm committed to working on in Sacramento.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question will be directed first to Mr. Cervantes. What are your specific plans to increase funding for California public schools? Your 2-minute response, please.
Specific plans, I think California public schools are funded just enough. We can't just keep pumping money into the school system. We need to be more accountable. Accountability is number one, not just funding. We need to know where the money's going. We need to let parents know where the money's going and make it accessible. All that information needs to be accessible. If it's being misused, misfunded, people need to be held accountable. It's more of accountability than funding. We can't just keep throwing money into the school system thinking it's going to fix everything. We need more programs, not just money. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Friedman, your 1-minute response, please.
Thank you. Well, I disagree that there's enough money in our educational system. California has to stop funding its public schools to the statutory minimum and should fund them instead to the amount that they actually need to educate students. We are at the very bottom in the country in terms of spending per pupil, and that's really a shame. We can do a lot better than that in California. First of all, I would start an oil extraction tax. We're one of the only states that doesn't tax the extraction of oil. And then we should look at the loopholes that exist right now in Prop 13. Now, I'm a big defender of Prop 13. It's something that allows me and many people to keep our homes. But in the commercial property sector, there are loopholes that were never intended in Prop 13 that keep commercial properties from being reappraised even when they're technically sold. So I think that that's a source of funding that we really have to look at while we still can. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kasakian, your 1-minute response, please.
Well, as someone who is a product of the public school system and is very fortunate to have gone to some of the best public schools in the country, seeing the state of affairs in our public school system right now is very saddening. You know, we spend $9,000 per student, which is $2,000 below the national average. California has continuously slipped, and part of this is because when times are bad, schools are the first places we make cuts. During the last economic downturn, 19% from our public education budget was cut. Prop 30 tried to replace that, but only to the tune of 11%. What we need to do is make sure that Proposition 30, which is going to expire in 2019, is made permanent And in addition to that, my plan for making sure that we give local control back to communities by lowering that threshold for taxing us to put that money back into our local schools, lower that threshold to 55% from the supermajority to 2/3%. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question will be directed first to Ms. Friedman. What is your position on charter schools? Your 2-minute response, please.
Well, I have concerns about the way many charter schools are operated in terms of not being transparent and accountable, and some charter schools that are accused of union busting and not allowing people to organize, something that I firmly believe that every American worker has the right to do. On the other hand, charter schools have a definite role when it comes to experimentation, for creating schools that are different for a different population of students than the general public school system, and also as a way for parents to do something different in school systems that are truly failing. So I do think that they have a role to play, but I believe that charter schools, like all schools, should be accountable, they should be transparent, and they should also be held to the same standards of allowing their workers to unionize. So right now we have many, many charter schools in Los Angeles County and certainly in the district that exist. Some do well, some don't do well. So we should evaluate all of our schools and try to set up best practices to make sure that every student who goes to public school gets an excellent education, no matter where they live, whether they're in a wealthy school district that can tax itself with a parcel tax, or whether they're in a district that doesn't have the resources to do that. We need to invest in our schools and in all of our public schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kasakian, your 1-minute response, please.
What I don't support is a two-tier education system between the have-nots and the have-lesses, especially in communities where schools are already struggling. If schools are failing, it's because we failed our schools. It's because we haven't given them the adequate funding, as I mentioned in my prior response. I don't believe that Wall Street should be running our schools. I don't believe private enterprises should be running our schools. The promise that we have here in California is that if you came here, worked hard, applied yourself, and got a good education, you could get ahead. And we deprive people of that by creating this two-tier educational system where kids get to go to one type of school and others have to remain at the school that doesn't have the funding. Let's fund all students, not just some students.
Thank you. Mr. McCarley, your 1-minute response,
You know, when you
please.
get down to the bottom line, it's all about the student and how that student will achieve and make his or her way into the future. And you know, charter schools were an experiment. Seems like the experiment kind of worked, because there are over 400 charter schools in Los Angeles County, and that number is expanding. Now, they are publicly funded, and when somebody says they should be transparent, absolutely. When you put tax money into things like this, they've got to be, their books and records have to be available for all of us to inspect. But the benefit that you get out of charter schools is the opportunity to innovate, and the best benefit derived from charter schools is when those schools are located in those hard areas where kids have a difficulty getting any form or type of education. So put those schools down in the inner city. Put those schools where we need those opportunities afforded to the kids. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be directed first to Mr. Kasakian. What do you see as the most urgent needs of the 43rd Assembly District, and how do you believe they should be addressed? Please explain. Your 2-minute response, please.
Well, I wish I had had the 2 minutes to answer the question about the charter schools, because I'll tell you, anyone who's been looking in their mailboxes this election season will know where the charter schools stand with me. But I'm happy to address the holistic issues that affect the 43rd Assembly District, because it's really why I decided to embark on this. We have an issue right now in terms of access to quality public education, not just at the K through 12 level, but at the Cal State University level. And also we have an issue with jobs. And lastly, we have an issue with the quality of life and neighborhood safety. So here's part of the problem as to what's going on in the state of California and why I'm running for this seat. We have individuals who want to maybe get an education, but when they go to a community college, 2-year college degree at a community college takes 4 to 6 years on average to get. That's not right. Then if they transfer to a 4-year institution, they take tens of thousands of dollars in debt, putting themselves in the hole before they've even found a job, and then they have to go into an anemic job market and try to find a career to pay back those student loans. After which, if they want to buy a house, especially in this district, good luck having 20% of $500,000, and $500,000 really won't get you much to be able to buy a house. That's why we're seeing more and more of the children of our longtime residents leaving this state, leaving the region, and going to places that are more affordable. What we need to do is strengthen our public schools. We need to make sure that Cal State education and UC education is affordable. I went to UCLA paying for my own education, working minimum wage job at the Glendale Gallery at JCPenney's, and also working part-time at UCLA, and was able to pay for it as a whole. Today, a student can't do that. And in addition to that, when they get into the market, when they want to find a job, we need to make sure that we have quality, high-paying jobs here locally for them to be able to pay down the student debt if they have any, and make sure that they can start a family and stay here locally in the area if that's what they want to do. Give them that option.
Thank you very much. Mr. McCarley, your 1 minute response,
Well, I
please.
kind of incorporate part of that answer, because the real test is, how was it when I was growing up here, sitting in this same council chamber when I was 8 or 9 years old, and what's it like now for my kids and your kids and all those people of whatever walk of life that are living in this town? And it's a lot harder, because when I got out of school, I had the opportunity, I had 5 jobs offered to me just at the time I got out of high school. Isn't the case now. I had an opportunity to go to school, and I could pay for that school by working summers. And then, of course, when you look at the other challenges of this district, you've got whole areas which we've not discussed, and that's about public security. And I'm not saying we should wave the flag and say that everything's going to come crashing down. But within this particular district, especially parts of it, we've seen an increase in crime. This is personal crime against people of 20% in the last year, and property crimes another 10%. That, coupled with the whole issues involving how my kid, your kid, gets an opportunity to find some place to live, those are the type of issues that we've got to address. Thank you.
Mr. Blumenfeld, your 1 minute response, please.
Thank you. Since I have just 1 minute, I am going to focus on one top issue, and that is the quality of our public schools. I believe deeply that if we are to provide every single child an excellent education, this will impact every other area of public life, just as every other area of public life impacts the quality of the education we're providing to our kids. And unfortunately right now, and this speaks to issues that get way beyond education, the relationship between Sacramento and local communities is such that they have sapped from us so much of our authority to govern locally, and have decided that instead one-size-fits-all solutions, which have been tinkered away with special interests, are better than our own local judgment. But we know better than that. We know better than that. I've seen that as a public school teacher in one of the most difficult schools in California, and I've seen that as the president of a school district in one of the top performing school districts in California. Inside of education and out, the fact that Sacramento thinks it can substitute their judgment in for ours is what's standing in the way of these phenomenal communities doing what we do best, and that is helping ourselves.
The final question will be directed first to Mr. McCarley. The 43rd Assembly District is home to great community colleges and a collection of small unified school districts. Proposition 30 has been credited with helping to save public education in California. What would you believe should be done as a follow-on to Proposition 30? Mr. McCarley, your 2 minute response.
Yeah, great question, but I want to get down to brass tacks. I'm just like everybody else. If there's any opportunity to make public education better, I'm all for it. But you know, when I talk about brass tacks, I'm talking about the cost associated with all this. So let's get the numbers. We got a $171 billion state budget. Out of that, by what we as people enacted about 15, 16 years ago, Proposition 98, you got 40% of that general fund that goes to education. Now, like some other people up here said, there was a shortfall because the economy collapsed. It went into the toilet the last couple of years. So the revenues to the schools went down. So in order to get that funding back up, we had Proposition 30 to drive money. But everything is dependent on the ability of this state and each one of us that live and work in this state to generate those type of revenues necessary to support the schools. It's not just isolated. You've got to have the opportunity to make that income necessary to do all the wonderful things that we've talked about. So it's all about generating that economic vitality that transmits into progress for each and every one of us and our kids in this district.
Thank you. Mr. Blumenfeld, your 1 minute response, please.
You know, I was on the Board of Education right before Proposition 30 passed, and when it passed, it was absolutely necessary for us to weather that terrible storm of the Great Recession. However, it will only ever be, renewed or not, it will only ever be a temporary solution to what is a very real long-term problem. Until California and its leaders are courageous enough to rethink the way that we collect and spend money in this state so that it actually matches the evolving nature of our economy, one that is now far more service-based. Until we're willing to make that transition, we will always have to go back and ask for another Band-Aid and another Band-Aid. And as I've mentioned many times, I'll say it again, at the end of the day, it also comes down to allowing our local leaders to be stewards of that money so that people have confidence in investing in our local services like schools. In California right now, our legislature passed a cap on the amount of money that school districts can save for a rainy day. They've limited the amount of money school districts can save because they think they know better. They don't. I know we know better than they do, and that's why I want to be your assemblyman to champion on our behalf.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock, your 1-minute response, please.
Both state and our regional GDP grew at 2.1% last year, which is a good thing. That means that Proposition 30 hasn't necessarily damaged our economic viability. So I am for extending it because I believe our schools need to be fully funded. We've been able to raise the budget for schools the last 2 years, but that's because we are doing economically well. It's going to come, economies are cyclical, and what's going to happen is we're going to have a downfall again. We need to make sure that we have funding in place to help our schools. Now, I have a plan, public-private partnership that I have. It's a graduated tax incentive for corporations to be able to help us to accentuate the budget and not to replace what government does. School districts would come up with lists of need, and these lists of need would be brought all the way up through to the Board of Education, and then these lists of need could be fulfilled by these corporations through tax incentives. We have a lot of large corporations in California. They have a lot of money. Why not try to connect it and change the relationship between these corporations and our state as they invest in the future?
Thank you. That concludes the questioning period. The candidates will now have 2 minutes each for their closing statements. Mr. Blumenfeld, your closing statement, please.
Thank you, and again, thank you so much for having me. As I'm Andrew Blumenfeld, a candidate for State Assembly. I thought I'd just leave you actually with a story that stays with me. It's from my first year of teaching, and it reminds me every day why I'm doing this work. I was standing outside waiting for Joelle to get picked up, one of my little 10-year-old fifth graders, to get picked up after school on a Friday. I, that weekend, was going to Washington, D.C. for a conference, and he turns to me and says, "Mister, what are you doing this weekend?" And I said, "I'm going to D.C." And he looked at me very concerned, and he said, "Are you in trouble?" And I thought that was very funny at the time because I imagined he thought D.C. to be sort of the principal's office for adults and that I was being scolded. But I found out later that it really wasn't that funny. He thought that D.C. meant Department of Corrections. And it sticks with me every day because I just remember how much work there is for us to do, both locally and at a statewide level, to make sure that we don't just provide an excellent education for Joelle and all the Joelles of the 43rd Assembly District, but we provide a transformational, trajectory-changing experience, whether it's access to affordable housing, access to affordable health care, a public transportation system that works, an environment that is sustainable. All of these things come together to make possible or not these children, all of our children, our whole community's possibility of realizing their full potential. I have seen up close and personal how far too often it's special interests instead that make the rules in Sacramento. They funnel money, loads of money, into these races up and down the state because they think it's up to them to decide for us what's best, and then at the end of the day, they create solutions that work for them. I'm not for them. I'm for you. I put kids' solutions ahead of adults. I put people's solution ahead of special interests. I have a powerful track record of doing exactly that, and I want to continue that work on your behalf in Sacramento. I'm Andrew Blumenfeld, and I'm your candidate for State Assembly.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock, your 2-minute closing statement, please.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters for the opportunity tonight. I think it's been a wonderful forum. I run for this office not because of what I want to be, but because I think there are certain things we need to do. And so I've come forward with a great many ideas. People often ask me, why are you running for this office? Why are you running for this office now? And the answer is because my ideas are macro, they're statewide. And they would not get traction in a more localized office. I ran for this office because of those ideas. Now, I haven't been able to express many of them, but they're on my website, votebullock.com, under issues. But some of them focus on water. I believe that water is a long-term problem for our state, and I believe that the water system that we have was a supply-side solution, bringing water from where it is to where we needed it to be, and it allowed us to grow immensely. But we've reached our limits of that system, and I believe we need to look for water outside of our region because we have no more regional sources to tap. I have an education funding public-private partnership proposal. It doesn't reduce easily into platitudes or catchphrases. It is complex. But I believe if it were implemented, it would bring us enormous benefit, accentuating the budget, not replacing what the state's responsibilities are. I have a minimum wage proposal that allows for certain tax credits to incentivize small and medium-sized businesses to keep their employees and not lay them off as we keep incrementally raising the minimum wage, because we've raised minimum wage before, and it has not had the catastrophic effects that people predicted. But we've never done it to this scale before. And I think by incentivizing businesses to keep those employees on the dockets, we'll be able to continue to grow our economy and to replace the tax revenue that we'd be losing.
Thank you so much. Mr. Cervantes, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. We need to make our cities, county, district, and state great again. You need to elect someone who will be engaged with the people they represent. I am someone who will be engaged and proactive. Legislators have time to present awards and plaques. I will make time to hold local meetings to help the public. Meetings where I will report directly and in person to the public about the progress we have made, plans they have in mind. Legislators must not forget the people they represent are not just there for election time when they're running for office. We still need to go door to door, shake their hands, and know we're still there for them. Taxes are raised, funds are saved, as with the California Rainy Day Fund, and budgets are balanced. When do we start to see the result of our taxes, government savings, and balanced budgets again? It has been too long. Every dollar spent is an investment by the government to its people and must have a return on that investment. Too many neighborhoods have broken roads and sidewalks. Clear signs of a deteriorating infrastructure are everywhere. I will fight for those returns with a veteran program, preservation projects, tax credits, development projects, and projects to rebuild our infrastructure. We can, we will, and I will make sure with your support that we make our district and our golden state of California great again. God bless you all, our district, our state, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you. Ms. Friedman, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. I want to thank the League for an excellent forum. You've heard a lot of great ideas tonight, and you've met some really good candidates, but there's only one candidate up here who has a legislative track record tackling the issues that are important to the voters. I have spent 7 years on the Glendale City Council working with the community to develop more local and affordable and clean sources of water, and I've done this as a 6-year member of the Metropolitan Water District Board of Directors. I've worked with the community to protect neighborhoods from overdevelopment, to make it easier to do business and create jobs, to come up with local public transportation solutions, to create meaningful ordinances to make sure that we have a sustainable future, and to stand up to the NRA, which is something I'm very proud to have had the opportunity to do. I'm being supported by a lot of the people in the organizations that you know and trust, dozens of locally elected and state elected representatives, and organizations that really tell you about my values. I'm being supported by the Sierra Club, the California League of Conservation Voters, Planned Parenthood, Emily's List, and many, many others, the American Federation of Teachers, the California Nurses Association. I'm very proud of what I've been able to accomplish in the last 7 years on the Glendale City Council, but I know because people come into my office every single week to tell me that they are struggling, that they are not recovering from the recession, and I feel compelled to go to Sacramento to help those people, to help the people in our community that are being left behind. I'm committed to being proactive and collaborative in Sacramento to tackle issues like poverty, access to excellent education, affordable college and job training, access to child care, health care. These are all of the issues that are important to the people in the 43rd District and California. And I understand when Sacramento helps cities and when Sacramento hurts them, because I've been in local government for 7 years working on these very issues. I have the experience that we need right now to get the job done, and I have a solid record of accomplishments that are both practical and progressive. My name's Laura Friedman, and I hope to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kasakian, your closing statement, please.
Building coalitions, bringing people together to get things done. It's been my greatest strength. It's why I'm in public service. It's why I hope to earn your vote. It's what I've done over the last 11 years as elected city clerk in Glendale. We reformed and modernized that office. empowering the people and putting government back in their hands. Now, voting against the NRA or against big tobacco isn't an accomplishment. It's what good civic leaders and good Democrats should be doing and not what they should be forced to do. And if you're not willing to do that, you shouldn't be looking at serving this district in the Assembly. Coalition building requires patience and determination. That's what I did when we came together with a group of grassroots activists to ban the gun show from being held on city property, the last gun show in Los Angeles County. The grassroots effort forced the city to confront a tough issue which they had ignored for far too long. And we proved that people power trumps special interest power every time. Over the last decade, I've worked with every single elected official in Glendale to bring about meaningful changes, such as a more transparent and accountable government. We have empowered the citizens of Glendale and made government work for us. And that is why every elected official in Glendale who has endorsed in this race is on my side. That's why Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti has endorsed my campaign. That is why State Treasurer John Chung stood up to members of his own party during a very tough budget session, has endorsed my campaign. And that's why the leadership of the State Assembly, from Assembly Member and Majority Leader Ian Calderon and Lorena Gonzalez, have also endorsed my campaign. And why every single grassroots Democratic club in this race has endorsed me. I'm not looking for headline-catching gimmicks. I'm looking to build bridges to get things done. I want to earn your vote, and when we look to elect a representative who's in it for the long haul, know that I'm there to roll up my sleeves, bring people together, and get things done. Vote for Artie Kasakian on June 7th, and let's move California forward together. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCarley, your closing statement, please.
Thank you. Tell you the difference between myself and almost all the other candidates up here is that while I am as concerned as all of them about the social needs and the challenges of living today in the 43rd Assembly District, the difference is I got a real reservation and a reluctance to put my hand in your pocket. Because when you get down to the basics, it's about how we are able to fund the great programs that we've spent now an hour and a half talking about. And when you get up as a legislature and you serve in the Assembly, there are only really two things that are worthwhile doing. And the first is that you work out the budget. You hear from the governor, you get the budget, and you pass the budget, and you kind of figure out where the revenues come from. So if there's anything that is critical and important to each one of us, if any of us gets the nod, goes up to Sacramento, it's what you do with the money that comes out of your pocket. That's the first thing. And the second thing is the commitment to each one of you in terms of service. You know, I really believe that after working that budget and figuring out how your hard-earned money is going to be allocated between schools and a variety of programs from health care to infrastructure repair, then it gets down to serving you. And that's all about getting back down to the district and taking care of those multiple problems that come as a result of this big government that tries to suffocate us in almost everything that we do. Is that community contact. So I'm proposing, what I'm saying is the less time we spend up in Sacramento, then it's a heck of a lot less in terms of careerism, corruption, and cronyism that inevitably results. And all those statements about special interest, that's exactly what takes place. The moment you get elected, you go up there, it's that 12-year term all of a sudden, you're up there 12 years, and unless you're a saint or an angel, you're going to get hit by that careerism, corruption, and cronyism. You know, I've been shaped by 12 years of almost continuous service in the Army. That's what I want to give you to serve you, and that's why I'm standing for 43rd Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our candidate forum. Our thanks to the candidates and volunteers for your participation in this evening's forum. We're also grateful to Drew Sugars, the Burbank Public Information Officer, and the staff of the Burbank Channel, Colleen and Zonin, for their valuable support in making this event possible. Finally, the League of Women Voters of Glendale Burbank would like to thank both our audience in attendance and those of you at home. Please be sure to vote, whether in person or by mail, so that your ballot is received by June 7th. And remember, on Election Day, it's the votes, not the polls, that count. Thank you, and good night.